Howdy YouTube, it's your buddy Ian, general contractor, and in this video I'm going to give you my 5 tips on installing these wafer LED lights that you see right here where my finger is. This is an example of the light. This is the commercial electric wafer LED light. The junction box is right here, the wiring's right inside there, and then they tuck into a hole you have pre-drilled. No need for an external box or anything like that. Let me show you the box for the light. Here's the box for the light. This is exactly what I have up above here. Okay, the first tip I highly recommend if you're going to be installing these wafer LED lights is 1, consult an electrician. You're going to probably have to change some wiring, move wires around, pull wires. Unless you are fully confident in your capabilities, I highly recommend you get a licensed electrician involved to do this type of wiring. That would be tip number 1. Okay, tip number 2. If you are going to tackle the project, you know what's going on up there, you're very comfortable around wiring, I highly recommend you have a second pair of hands. Even if it's just someone on the ground that you're talking to and they're handing tools to you, that's going to go a long way. When it comes to pulling wire, you don't have to have a second pair of hands, but I can tell you right now it's going to save a lot of time. I had a second pair of hands in the 15 of these lights I put in throughout this house. It's extremely helpful with pulling wire. It's extremely helpful with insulation and all that sort of stuff. So that would be tip number 2, have a second pair of hands. Okay, tip number 3 is going to be understanding what's going on in the ceiling. And that comes down to, in my opinion, 2 specific things. 1, you need to know how your ceiling is insulated. What is the insulation on the top of the drywall or the plaster right there? What I have here, which was very common in the 1950s, is blown-in cellulose insulation. It's simply shredded newspapers. I have had so much of it fall out of these holes that I decided not to pull any down for this video, but if you know anything about insulation, you probably know what this looks like. Depending on the age of your home or the building you're working on, you may have fiberglass bats of insulation, which are probably not going to fall through the hole. You may have mineral wool. You may have something like spray foam, which if you need to cut a hole in the ceiling to put this light in, spray foam insulation could cause a couple problems. Really depends on the setup you have. So before you just go full bore into this project and plan out all of your lights, understand what kind of insulation you have in the ceiling. And you could do that by getting in the attic, looking on the floor of the attic. You could, if you really needed to, you could drill a couple pinholes. Second part of this is know where your rafters are. Before you figure out where these lights are going to go, you have to know where the rafters are or whatever framing members your ceiling, your drywall is attached to. Because what you cannot do is drill one of these holes and find out that the rafter's running right through the middle of it, because then your light will not fit in that opening. You need to know exactly where the rafters or the framing members are of your ceiling, because that's what you need to know in order to plan out where all of your lights are going to go. Spend more time than you think planning where the lights are going to go. I use a laser to draw lines on the ceiling, tells me what's straight, all sorts of things like that. I get some X's going once I know how the rafters are mapped out on the ceiling. So do a lot of planning as far as the distances between your lights and how many lights you're going to have in the system, how much light you want in the area, where the angle of the light is going to come down and hit, things like that. This bathroom was really easy to do because I just added 2 of these because there were 2 can lights on a drop ceiling in exactly these locations almost, and I knew exactly where the rafters were because they're running this way, almost right down the middle of this room where my hand is going. And that made this a pretty easy project to do. Tip number 4, there's absolutely no way you're going to be able to cut a hole successfully, especially if you aren't a professional, to get this light to stick into without a hole saw like this. This is from Lowe's. This hole saw is the exact size, which is 6 3/8. You're going to attach this hole saw to any standard drill, and you're going to drill that hole in the ceiling. That's the only way these lights are going to work. Cool thing about this hole saw is it comes with this dust tray, which attaches under the blade. The box, the Cobalt 6 3/8 hole saw for recessed lights. Okay, and the last tip is, since you're probably going to be using something like this 14-2 wire here, this is your basic residential wiring for lights like this. Yours might be different. Check with your codes, check with an electrician. You're going to need a way to fish your wires around to put these lights in. I'm not saying this is a difficult project. I'm just saying you have to have the right tools in order to do it successfully. So the other thing you're going to need is a wire tape, a wire fish, a metal wire fish tape of some kind. It goes by a lot of different names. I'm proud to say I did buy this one also at an estate sale for $8. This is how you fish wires through the ceiling and through walls. You hook your wire to this guy right here, and then you tape it with electrical tape as smooth as you possibly can, and then you can fish this wire through the ceiling. The hardest part is going to be getting the wire over joists and things like that. If you're running along the joist, it's going to be pretty easy, especially depending on the type of insulation you have. Going over the joists is a whole different matter. In this situation, I had to bring power from way over here on this built-in bulkhead you're seeing right here, and I had to go over two joists. That was the hardest part of the entire project. It probably took 80% of the time. So make sure you have the right hole saw, and make sure you have the correct tools to get wire to go from one place to another. I would just restate one time, it's highly likely you want to have an electrician do all of the wiring, and maybe you have him leave the wires and then you wire it up, because that's a pretty easy part of this project. Either way, here was 5 tips to help you install these modern LED wafer lights, which just tuck into the hole right there. I hope this helps. I hope you get some new lighting in your house, and I hope you have a great day. If this video helped you out, think about subscribing or pushing the like button, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.